Avengers: Age of Ultron came out in 2015 and is the sequel to the incredibly successful The Avengers film that was released back in 2012. And from the start, became one of the most anticipated movies of 2015. And in this film, the story revolves around Tony Stark, who creates the Ultron program to try and help the world, but once the peaceful program goes wrong, the Avengers must assemble once again in order to defeat the villainous Ultron from causing global extinction. I'd have to say this movie is very good. It's a very fun time. It's not as good as the first Avengers. It's not even as good as Infinity War. And in all honesty, this is actually my least favorite Avengers film. It's not a bad film. This is nowhere near a bad film or a terrible film. It's a good film. I just think it's my least favorite. It's just my least favorite one in my opinion. It's not really that strong in regards to storytelling like the first Avengers was, or even Infinity War. But I have to say Age of Ultron is a very promising sequel. And what can I say that hasn't been said already about the actors? Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, and etc. They're all great in this movie. One thing that I found a little different about this movie compared to the other Avengers films is some of the character dialogue decisions in this film. Like, for example, there were times in this film, where the sort of character dialogue felt a little weird. Sometimes a little too weird. For example, there are some moments in this film where Natasha is flirting with Bruce Banner. And I didn't really know what it was supposed to mean. I didn't want to know what it was supposed to mean. But they added like a certain subplot where both of these characters should just run away or something like that. It's a little weird. But yeah, some of the character dialogue is unnecessary in this film, honestly. And even some of the humor doesn't really work that much in that film. A lot of the humor really does work in this film really well, but it's just a couple of elements in this film where I felt like the humor just gets a little too repetitive. I'll have to say the action sequences are phenomenally well done, and I was intrigued in them. I wasn't necessarily on the edge of my seat, but I loved watching the action sequences. I thought they were really well done. And the CG in this film, really well handled, honestly. James Spader is honestly really good as Ultron. I love the dark and menacing tone Ultron delivers into this film. It was actually somewhat unique. And the idea of this villain not only causing global extinction, but starting a new generation on Earth is really kind of interesting. And I wanted to see a little more and know more of this villain. And that's one disappointing thing about this movie, that we didn't get a lot of information about Ultron, a lot of important information at least, on his purpose. And another thing that bugged me about Ultron is sometimes he got a little annoying as a villain. Like sometimes he would just say things on screen that almost sounds like it makes you want to punch him. Like just punch him in the face. Like, so there are some times where the villain does get a little annoying. And I wanted this villain to have like a little bit of a low-key feel from like the first Avengers, but not too much of it, because it'd be really too obvious and it'd almost just be a copy and paste of Loki, but in a robot form. But where I'm coming from is technically Ultron wasn't necessarily that strong of a villain. The CG for Ultron looked incredible, absolutely great, and the voice acting is amazing. He's just not that strong of a villain. This movie really does know how to entertain. That's one thing that I love about this movie. It knows how to entertain. It knows how to create thrilling elements. And it can tell a pretty decent story, actually. Like I said, the story is not as strong as the first Avengers film, but you can follow up with it at least. And that's something that you gotta appreciate about this film, that you could at least follow up with the story. But honestly, if you are a Marvel fan that has not seen Age of Ultron, I'd recommend giving it a watch, honestly, especially if you're a fan of the first Avengers. Because I'm pretty sure you'll dig this movie. And I'm not going to make any guarantees because I know there are a lot of mixes about this movie. There are people who love this movie, there are people who hate this movie, there are people who are in between. I personally had a good time with this movie. Like I said, it's not as good as the first Avengers film or even Infinity War, but it is a good film. It has really well elements, and some of the elements in this film are unnecessary. And the actors are amazing, the action sequences are really well set up, the CGI is incredible, and you can follow up with the story. And my previous issues that I stated with this movie were that some of the character dialogue in this film, was unnecessary, and there are a couple of elements of humor that just fell flat for me in this film, or just got a little repetitive. Especially a couple of jokes where someone would say a curse word and then the other hero was like, oh, I don't like that, or something like that. Yeah, there were actually a couple of jokes like that in this movie, and they happened a little bit, and they happened like a couple of times, but it felt like it kept repeating itself. But anyway, my other issue that I had with this movie is that I felt like the first 15 minutes of this movie were a little slow. After that, that's where the movie picks up and gets to its story a little bit, but I felt like the first 15 minutes were a little slow. Because right when the movie starts, it jumps right into action and stuff like that. The movie jumps right into action, and we don't get much of the story really to get fresh in our brain. So I'd say honestly, the first 15 minutes of this movie were a little slow, but after that, that's when the movie gets going. But yeah, those are my only flaws with Age of Ultron. I don't have any other issues with this movie. I think this is a very fun sequel that deserves to be praised, especially by Marvel fans. It's not as good as the first Avengers, like I already stated. It's not even as good as Infinity War. This is my least favorite Avengers film, but it's not bad or terrible. For now, this is my least favorite Avengers film, but we'll have to see how Endgame is when that comes out, which is on Thursday night, which I'll be seeing that. I'm going to be seeing Avengers Endgame on opening night, so stay tuned for a review, guys. But anyway, Age of Ultron is a very fun movie. I'd recommend it if you haven't seen it and if you're a fan of Marvel. Or even if you're not a fan of Marvel, technically, I'd give this a watch. But if I were you, I'd watch the first Avengers and make your way down to Infinity War. But yeah, Age of Ultron is a fun movie, and even though it's sometimes unfairly ranked compared to the other two Avengers movies, this film is really good, honestly. I'm going to give Avengers Age of Ultron a B. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Look forward to Captain America Civil War. That's going to be my next review that I'm going to be uploading. Can't wait to tell you my thoughts on that movie. I absolutely can't wait. And look forward to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 that I'll be doing, and maybe the Iron Man movies, and Doctor Strange, and a couple more Marvel movies before Endgame comes out. And I also want to try to review some Marvel movies after Endgame comes out too, because, you know, sometimes I'm a completionist and I like to complete things. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this review. You guys are the best. Love every single one of you. Look forward to more reviews that will be coming very soon. And as always, I am MarioFan520, and I will see you next time. Peace out.